Now, Interior Cabinet Secretary, that is Dr. Fred Matiang'i, is chairing his first meeting of the key committee on the implementation of development programs. Now, the committee comprises all cabinet secretaries, also the Attorney General and the head of public service. The vice chairperson of the National Development Implementation and Communication Cabinet Committee is Treasury and Planning CS Dr. Henry Rotich.
How are you, Waziri? How are you, Waziri? Waziri. Good morning, Waziri. Yes, how are you, sir?
Now, what you've seen on your screen just now are different cabinet secretaries making their way to the office of the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, for that meeting that he will be having with all the cabinet secretaries, the Attorney General and the head of public service. So right now, I'd like us to cross over to the city centre at the INDM specifically, a studio, and talk to our reporter, Duncan Haimba. Haimba, good morning. And it is the first meeting that Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i is holding after his appointment by the president. What do we expect to come out of this meeting at the end of the day?
Good morning, Acheng, Brenda Radido. Of course, this is the first one, and remember that our crew was there very early enough, and you've seen the arrivals. It was very early, which means it's of course coming at the backdrop of that riot act that the president disclosed to the public, to the nation, as he was heading to Arusha, that he had read a riot act to cabinet secretaries that they either work or exit cabinet if they choose, if they'll focus on their work or not. Now, of course, matters that happen in cabinet, largely they are supposed to be confidential, but for the president to come out and give that warning, that tell the country that he has told them with the finality that he will not warn anyone once again, basically it explains why we've seen that arrival. And of course, it goes to explain much, or maybe the clout that Interior sees Fred Matiang'i, who many actually perceive as the president's man, or Mr. Fix-It, as you say, or Mr. Change, as some would want to call him. And therefore, after being given that responsibility, and after the president having a cabinet meeting, the first one in 2019, and perhaps explaining to his team in the executive what his executive order number 1 of 2019 entails or seeks to achieve, that tells you why as early as 7 they were making their way to office of the president at Harambe House. Therefore, it is a huge responsibility for CS Matiang'i, whom the scorecard is out there in the public domain. Many know how he's been performing. Every ministry or whichever portfolio he's been able to hold since 2013, he has left an impact. Of course, many saying that for him, it appears his mantra is it's either his way or we will face the consequences, not necessarily his way or the highway, but basically his way or you will feel the effect. And that explains why He's been very ruthless in implementing policies in the ministries or the dockets that he's been able to hold, some within a very short period that he's been there, and therefore perhaps it explains why he's been tasked to be in charge of the cabinet. Basically, when you look at the composition, initially we thought that it was a small team that he would be chairing, but when you look at the members of that, basically you can say he is maybe the third in command, of course, after the president and the deputy, because he will be the chair, deputized by the CS and National Treasury and Planning, Rotich. Then the members will entail all cabinet secretaries, the Attorney General, and the head of public service. Basically, that is what the president does, which means if the president is not chairing the cabinet, the mini cabinet is being chaired by Interior CS Fred Matiang'i, and that explains why things will have to move. And as we've said, he's been a CS that has left an impact in the portfolios that he's been able to hold, and therefore we do expect that maybe things will have to move. And of course, before I hand over back to you, Brenda, there were rumors or there were talks that there were some CSs that appeared hostile to his elevation or his appointment to be in charge of the cabinet subcommittee, as we thought. But when you look at the composition from that executive order, it's basically the entire cabinet. And therefore, we do understand the president firmly explained himself and what he seeks to achieve with this new arrangement under his regime. Remember, time is running out for the president. He has a legacy that he wants to leave behind. He came up with what we would call his Big Four agenda, and with now basically 3 years to go, that tells you why now Fred Matiang'i, with his performance record, maybe he's been tasked to be in charge of the cabinet. Basically, you look at it as being playing the supervisory role of his colleagues. Brenda.
Right, Ayemba, if I got you right, you're saying that among other things that are supposed to be discussed today is that riot act that was read by President Uhuru Kenyatta, non-performing CSs and those who are engaging in politics. But also this meeting is also about development projects. So are we expecting to get an update from the CS there, specifically Dr. Fred Matiang'i, because he's chairing the meeting, in terms of the progress of some of these development programs?
Brenda, I think it would be a bit premature to seek to get what you would call an update, because this is their first meeting, and maybe after the president spelling out what he seeks to achieve with this reorganization, maybe today, I think the team is now meeting, of course, now as peers. Maybe they could be going to set their terms of engagement on how they are going to realize what the president seeks to achieve. Remember that they are all equal before the president, and by virtue of their appointment, and basically the role that some are saying that the CS Matiang'i, the super CS or the chief CS, some would say that maybe he's the prefect, he's like the head boy of the cabinet. Maybe what we think, because it's their first meeting, maybe they are going to have the terms of engagement on going forward, because they will be meeting, and whatever they meet, discuss, and maybe checking on the progress of various undertakings. Then the CS and his partner from National Treasury, they'll now praise the president on the update. So for today, I don't think we will be able to get exactly any update, but maybe they will be kind enough or gracious enough to share with the public on what was it like, what were they discussing. Because even the cabinet, whenever the president chairs the cabinet, they will always issue a dispatch explaining what the cabinet was all about, the resolutions made. And therefore, we do expect that maybe today they'll be able to tell us what they agreed upon, their framework of engagement, and how they are going to be working. Then they know at what point will they be reporting to the CS Interior, and what point will they be the same being cascaded upward to the president when he gets the report from their colleague Fred Matiang'i, who is in charge or who chairs that. But basically, there are 7 functions that this committee is supposed to do, because one is to provide supervisory leadership throughout the delivery cycle of all national government projects. The second one being receiving and deliberate on reports from the National Development Implementation Committee. That is a committee that is almost equivalent to this one of the cabinet, but at that level of principal secretaries, which will be chaired by the PS for Interior, Karanja Kibicho. So that will be the second function. The third being providing timely guidance on appropriate measures to address challenges constraining effective implementation. Of course, as we've said, time is of the essence. 3 years to go. The president wants to move with speed and see to it that his Big Four agenda is realized. Therefore, part of it, they will be giving an update or appraising the CS on how far things are moving. The fourth being to monitor and evaluate the follow-up mechanisms for resources allocated for national government priority programs. Basically, those are the 4 among the 7. So we will be waiting to see if this mini cabinet will also do what the main cabinet does, and that is giving a dispatch or communication on what the meeting was all about, what was agreed upon. Brenda.
All right. Thank you so much, Dan Kanahemba, talking to us from a city center studio, just concerning Dr. Fred Matiang'i's meeting with all the